All right, we're live streaming. All right, it's 7:06. We'll call our meeting to order. And we'll start with minutes from November 9th. The motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Joel. Tor. Any discussion on the minutes?
Look good.
Everything looked good. All right, all in favor of passing the minutes from November 9th?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. All right, we'll move on to 5.1, Academy Hill Project wrap up. So who do we want to start with, Andrew or Seth or John?
Well, I'll just say very quickly, this has been, there's been a lot of work that's come into this. I appreciate the 5 of you have been quite patient as I've made promises about we're ready to talk about it. No, wait, we're not ready to talk about it. Now we are ready to talk about it. Now we're not ready to talk about it. So I appreciate the 5 of you being patient with that and also providing feedback where needed about, hey, I don't think I know what I need to know to make a decision here. So I think that's good. That makes it difficult for our contractor, but that's how it goes, and we have to use the process that the board needs to take to make these decisions. Since we first talked about this at the beginning of November or end of October, I can't remember which it was, we've proceeded through a process where we have basically taken all of the pay recs and we'd put them in Andrew's hands. Andrew's worked through those. He then worked with Seth, and Seth they both worked out some different details. And so I tried to give you kind of in your packet somewhat of the flow of that conversation, because there's a lot that's happened since we really first talked about this at the, whatever it was, beginning of the month, let's say. A lot has happened since then. So I wanted you to understand why it's taken this long, first of all, but second of all, to understand kind of how things have changed. So we're now at a good point. Seth's put together a revised pay requisition 11, pay requisition 12. Andrew's looked at that and is in agreement on those numbers. So just from there, in terms of the 1,000-foot view of all this, we're in a good position. But I think it probably makes sense to have both Seth and Andrew maybe talk about how we got here and where we are. Maybe to start with Seth, and then Andrew can fill in, from there. That's all right. Does that work?
That works.
All right, guys. Well, as you know, the project is complete, and we have to go through this process of checks and balances, which I certainly can appreciate for sure. As you know, the number of change orders that we have on this project. Well, let me back up for a second. As you know, the project in itself was pretty unique in how we orchestrated it to try to get the biggest bang for the dollar for the taxpayer for the town of Newcastle. I can assure you with 100% certainty that's exactly what you got, because we have numerous change orders that actually are over and above everything that is listed. And the challenge that John was referring to is, basically, long story short, is we're making this budget fit where it needs to be. The rest of any of the overages are simply being absorbed by us. And I need to justify those overages as appropriately should be through Andrew, who's checked and made sure that what we have proposed to you is accurate and is right. So Andrew and I have gone through that process together and re-verified unit prices and gone through the various change orders, and we have in some forms agreed to disagree on certain things, which is good because he brings his perspective to it, and on other things totally agreed. But at the end of the day, again, we're able to work to the middle and found a common goal. And so we were able to present the revised pay rec to you guys, which will finish up all of the items that I have withstanding for Academy Hill, and as well any of the extras that were included in the project, i.e. lighting and some of the other stuff. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Andrew, please jump in if you have anything to add to that. I mean, if you guys have specific questions about change orders or validity. None of the change orders, as you know it, really changed. Some of them got added to, as far as miscellaneous change orders that were extra ones that were done that we then added extras to for more clarity or more detail. We went through and, like I said, we refined some of the items within the change orders as they have specific pay dollar amounts associated with them. For example, flagging cost or labor cost or machine cost, things like that. We revised those numbers to line up with the original big documents so that everything is copacetic. So I guess I have to ask for any questions that you guys have at this point in time without knowing specifically if you have anything in particular. I can't really address it. Andrew, please feel free to jump in if you have any other questions or comments to add to any of that. I welcome your input, but I'd have to turn it back to the board and ask for you guys at this point. If there's anything else I can answer for you.
Yeah, if you're ready for me to kind of jump in there. So as the overseer of this contract, what I did at the end of this project was I took all the information that John provided to me and Seth provided to me that included all those pay requisitions and included all the change orders. And I went through each one of the change orders. I looked at quantity of units that were asked for. And the big thing in the changes that we had were the unit prices. So I then took the bid pricing that came through with Seth's original bid, which he listed everything in unit prices from flagging to catch basin to loam, seed, everything he was going to potentially use on this, he provided a unit price. So then I used what he originally put in the bid and I cross-referenced it towards what the change orders were. And I went through and there were a few discrepancies, minor things. One went up $5, one went down $5 per unit. But I did that just to make sure the numbers lined up. I also went through the change orders and looked for things that he didn't include. There are a couple of items that weren't included, minor items. The big one was like the thermoplastic crosswalk that we had called for at the Lincoln Academy entrance. That was not credited to the town through the change order process. So I brought that to his attention. And then we went through a few other various items. And at the end of my initial review, there was an offset credit that I was recommending that he reduce his invoice amount by about $10,000 ultimately. So he took it one step further. He went through his things. He revised, he looked at things. He then updated his pay requisitions to include, nearly $60,000 of additional services that weren't originally included in the change orders. Essentially, he thought he had his contract amount of the $2 million, and he did enough change orders to get to that $2 million. And then he said, well, we're at that $2 million. I'm not going to invoice anymore. So we didn't provide those to him. So after discussions between John, Seth, and I, we realized that there was a number of additional changes that he didn't include, which were all valid. The things we talked about, some pretty costly, some minor, but they all added up to about $60,000. So regardless, he ended up reducing the final pay requisitions by about $12,000 and some change. So it was more than my original review, and he provided additional items that were not charged to the project. So based on that, based on the revisions he made, based on what we saw that has been completed, we are recommending that the town proceed to provide him with his payment for the change orders and his payment for half of the retainage in his pay requisition 12. So 2 cents on the retainage. The retainage is an amount of money that the town can leave in the contract until the project has been completed, reviewed and approved, to make sure the contractor has incentive to come back and fix what's not finished. We've done a preliminary walkthrough. We haven't been able to do an official walkthrough. We did a preliminary. Everything was in order. There were a few little minor things that he was already aware of that he was working on cleaning up. So at this point in time, there's about a $40,000 worth of retainage that we're recommending you hold on to, with the hope that we can do a final walkthrough right after the holidays here and get this off the table and get everything cleaned up as far as the record keeping goes. But there were a substantial amount of changes. That's what led us to exceeding the original contract amount by by about $47,000, essentially on the $2 million project. That includes our construction oversight and quality control and everything that we had planned on for the construction part. We were able to offset some of the overtures with the Mills Road crossing. We did part of the crossing. We did the critical part where we got the lights in, we got the signals in, but we didn't do the sidewalk down to the town office, just to make sure that we could try to hold back and not continue to exceed the project budget. But there were a number of things that were added throughout the project, not in addition to just the changes that we ran into. A lot of the changes were associated with underground items that we ran into, such as ledge, such as conflicts. There were substantial conflicts during the process of construction that we had to move catch basins around. Some were, he had set a catch basin in place and we'd go 2 catch basins up, and we ran into a conflict that couldn't just be simply switched. So we had to recore, put a new basin in, adjust the basin location. So there was quite a bit of moving around with all these things. And that was expanded into other improvements, such as cleaning up the High Street intersection. We added more curbing along that section. We cleaned up underneath the bridge where we added a lot of back curbing and cleaned out the drainage swales in those locations that we had not originally planned on doing. But while we were there looking at how to put all this back together, it was a field change that was made. And those are just a few of the number of changes that we encountered and kind of supported making those adjustments as we went through the construction process.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Wendy.
So I guess I'm looking at all these numbers and I'm sorry, I'm a little tired today, but so I guess my question is, what is the bottom line? What is the total that the town paid for this project?
The $2,047,529.94.
So the original contract was for 1,700,000 and say $1.8 million.
Yep.
So we have gone over that by 200 and say $50,000.
Yes. Yes.
Unbelievable.
Well, not really, because part of that was your fees too, wasn't it, Andrew?
It was. There's about $50,000. There's $60,000 worth of construction oversight, quality control. So the original project was planned on budgeted. It was about that $1.8 million with a few options, and then the changes occurred. But that, like you said, that $200,000 included our cost, included the quality control, the testing that we had out there for both asphalt and material testing. So there's about a $60,000 difference in there. So we had about $140,000 worth of overtures, if you will, additional expenses. But when you do a construction project of this magnitude, a $2 million construction project, having a 10%, 15% contingency is not that uncommon. Anytime you're working in a busy city road, this road has multiple sewer lines, multiple water lines. There's a lot of conflict associated with that. To think that any project will come in exactly on the end of budget when you're digging underground is unreasonable, quite honestly. There's always something that you encounter. We can't predict where ledge is. We did our best to identify where the water lines was, but unfortunately the sanitary district didn't have good information on where all those were located. So again, we put the designs together to hope we can avoid those. And then we run smack into the side of a water line when we're trying to put a pipe in place, and it can't be avoided. The water line can't be relocated because it's sitting on ledge. So ultimately we have to adjust the storm drain to raise the elevation of it and put a new cross pipe in there to make that work. So there were a number of changes, and I understand $150,000 sounds like a lot. But I assure you, you've got far more than $150,000 worth of additional value when you start adding in the additional items that Hagar did not charge to the town. But ultimately, you got to look at the percentage of the project. I know there was additional lights that were added, and it just kind of goes on and on as far as the additional changes that happened.
Well, I think it was my understanding that if we started running into too much trouble, that we were going to come back and maybe scale back on some things that we could. because my concern is we did have a $200,000 consistency in there, that, so we did the loan for 2 million, but now we're $50,000 short. So that
Right.
falls square on the taxpayers of Newcastle, and you know, that's a hard pill to swallow for me. I mean, a $2 million project is hard enough to take on without, now we've got, you know, 50,000 more dollars that we have to come up with. And, you know, and on top of all the COVID expenses we have, which has nothing to do with this, but, you know, that's 50,000 more dollars that we didn't even begin to plan on. So that's just my concern for the taxpayers of Newcastle.
I would add, or just like to remind the board as well, that we haven't received any reimbursement for MDOT yet either. And
That's
that MDOT reimbursement will also go to help offset that $50,000 over and above. MDOT is currently already committed 10, and that's our task between Andrew, John, and I to go after DOT and then further educate them about the complications of the sidewalk to try to achieve a greater degree of funding as a result of what we encountered there that, you know, quite frankly, they didn't know about either. So we still have that task to complete, and that those funds will come back towards assisting and offsetting any overages as well.
Seth, what about the railroad and the sewer and water district?
The sewer and water district bills are not even included in your spreadsheets that you have there. That I treated them totally separate to keep them, quite frankly, simple and out of any confusion as far as the town goes. I can tell you that both of their bills were in the range of, without having them directly in the front of me, I think 32 and 35,000, somewhere in that ballpark, for their conflicts that they had addressed, and the extra work that they requested while we were there as well. Remember, that's not all direct conflicts, but for example, the water district had us replace and install 4 brand new hydrants and a field hydrant while we were there. It just made sense that they were updating their fire protection while we were through there. We had a couple of sewer laterals that we found that were just purely wrong, and we replaced those while we're there. So there was some infrastructure. Some of that money doesn't represent all complications. It's also additional work that was done at the same time. For example, lowering all the sewer structures to allow us to reclaim, that's a utility's responsibility to do, so that we could reclaim and regrade and repave. A portion of their bill was to charge them to reset all, I believe it was 12 or 13 of their basins that we had conflicts with. So it's for work associated that is part of their bill. It's not just purely a conflict status or issue that we had in the project. There are conflicts associated with the bill, but not all of it represents the total amount.
Are those, is that you directly billing them, or is that funds coming back to us?
Nope, me directly billing them. I kept it totally separate to keep it clean, away from the town. You know, it has nothing to do with you, quite frankly. Most of the items didn't have anything to do with you as far as the town was concerned. So I thought it best to treat it as separate entities altogether, and has nothing to do with the board or the town or anything else.
All right, what about the railroad side?
Yep, same thing with the railroad. The railroad work that they requested in between the tracks to have the additional work done is between us and the railroad. Has nothing to do with the town. It wasn't work that we were necessarily planning to redo all those rubbers and to go to the extent that they wanted to do. I totally agreed and supported their cause, and we gave them, you know, really decent pricing, just like we did for you guys, to try to make this all work. But I didn't include it as part of the town because it had nothing to do with our scope or what we were tasked to do or anything. It was purely between us and the railroad company.
Go ahead, Rob, you're going to say something.
Yeah, the work for DOT Mills Road, they've committed to reimbursing $10,000, but what was the total value of that work?
Yeah, great question. I believe, for rough numbers, just bear with me, Rob, without specifically, right around $40,000 was where we ended up with that work after we made the adjustments to the flaggers and stuff. And they committed $10,000. There's easily more, I won't say easily, there's justifiably some more reasoning that we can go to the DOT and say, hey, look, We added an extra, 2 feet to your typical sump on your manhole to allow you for adjustment for future projects. We had conflicts with this particular utility to make this. We had to redo pipe that was already put in place to upsize to allow for drainage coming off of Mills. I mean, there's, the list goes on, and that's something that Andrew and I can easily sit down with them and say, you got to consider this and you got to consider that, and this is the reason for this. And these are all things that the DOT in their scope of work would, they're not going to be foreign to any of this. None of this is going to be from left field. So it'll be, I hope, a conversation that should be rather engaging and show them that they need to contribute some additional funds to make that intersection right for their project coming up in the next 2 years.
Right. So most of our overage over our $2 million can be attributed to work that really should be funded in whole by DOT.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go after them 100%, I mean, I don't think that it's fair to say 100% of everything right there at that intersection is DOT's responsibility. But I certainly believe 50% of it is fair to say, because, from Andrew's engineering and what he wanted to do, the original scope, that pipe was in place and we had some stuff done and already that work was completed. DOT then comes along and says, oh, we want to add this and change this. So I think that I think it's easily fair to say 50% is their responsibility and 50% is our responsibility. Andrew, what do you
Okay.
think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Some of it is the towns, where it is in the intersection, the ability to tie into their system. So a 50%, when you break it all down, seems to be very fair and reasonable for both parties.
I have a question on the number you gave it, Andrew. So what John sent us, it says it's 2,028,715.56. So the total overrun is 28,000. That does not include the DOT money coming back to DOT.
I'm going to jump over Andrew and say his numbers are better than mine on this. He and I talked about this today, and I know where I went wrong with my number. I was going off of Seth's spreadsheet, and Andrew went a different way to come up with his number that actually is correct. And I was doing my best to try to recreate the number so at least you guys had a bottom line number. But Andrew's number is actually going through each pay rec and working back up through that way, as opposed to mine taking base bid plus, basically just as it looked like on my report. So I would lean on Andrew's number 100%, and mine was not as good.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'd just say that when we started this project, and we've been planning this project for a long time and talking about it for years. But the idea was that we would be able to do something that wouldn't have to be fixed down the road, and down the road being like 5 years. And so I think the extra work of reorganizing the pipes and making sure everything, all the drainage was done correctly, and we did some extra stuff that came up during the, during a crazy rainstorm that we had that really alerted us to a lot of problems that we had up there. Taking care of all those things is a really good investment for the town, I think. I'm thankful that we took the time to address all those issues and make sure that we had a quality project in the end. And I mean, we had planned on a 10%, contingency. We have a 12% contingency right now. So I think a 2% over the course of the project is it's not what you shoot for, but I know I have renovation in the title of my business, and overruns are pretty much par for the course, because you don't know what you're gonna run into until you cut the hole. And it's the same thing when you're digging something, and it's a lot of money per day when you're trying to figure something out. So I'm glad that we set everything up the way we did, where we had, you know, Gartley and Dorsky there to oversee the project and make sure that, you know, there was good communication and oversight. And I'm glad that we had, you know, Seth looking over the project as well and just making sure that everything was done in a way that, you know, would serve the town for much longer, and we wouldn't have to worry about someone coming in and leaving and saying, well, you can't see it from my backyard. So that's just my my take on it.
We also did a bunch of extra work on diverting water from between the water tower and the spring on top of the hill.
Yeah.
So our road should be completely dry now. So I haven't seen any water on it since we completed that project, so, which has been nice. Considering before we started, that water was running from the water tower all the way down the road. So. Yeah. Nope, I think it's a good project. I think we don't have to worry about anything in the ground, hopefully for the next 20 to 30 years, even the road itself, except for some crack sealing and maybe a, you know, a coating 15 years from now. So. We always figured we knew we'd end up at 2 million or just over. But it's 100%. Sidewalks are done. Curbing looks great. Whole project looks good. The lights will be in. So. And we'll just figure out we're going to come up with $47,000 at. Maybe that's something we look at going back to the general fund. Unless we have other funds in different pockets of our budget that we can pull from. So.
Yeah, and to that point, Brian, Seth and I have had some conversations in areas where looking at the current maintenance budget and the capital budget, while the vast majority of that work is done, there are still some projects that are still outstanding that we budgeted for this coming year that, you know, we may want to take a second look at. It's something we can come back and talk to the board about in terms of, does it still fit? Does it make, you know, so I think that there's a couple different, you know, balls in the air, certainly with DOT and some projects that we didn't complete, that to make sure we come into the penny on that $2 million number. So I think that there's ways to get there. There's ample ways to get there to make sure that there isn't a need to go back at all in any way. I would never recommend that of this board that you go back to the town to say you need more. I think we can work with what we have. It's a question of, you know, how much can we get from the DOT, how much can we get on some of these other projects that maybe aren't as high a priority as they might have seemed, or we overestimated in terms of what the budget was for those projects, and there's some savings in some areas. So I think that there's a different ways to get there, and you know, the main question is, you know, to me, and the main question to me is the project what you expected it to be? You know, and is this project what you wanted it to be? And that's, you know, the fundamental. There are always going to be changes. There's going to be, you know, as Andrew said, there's ledge. There's things you aren't aware of. I can tell you the amount of time I spent working with neighbors, particularly on the lower section, to deal with some issues that were completely unknown to anybody. We had a 500-year flood. I mean, this was one for the ages in so many ways. And so we you know, having said it all, and then having DOT, this hasn't been mentioned, but the issue with DOT of that Mills Road crossing was not something that should have really come up the way it did. They were willing to work with us on this, and we're very thankful for that, but it kind of came in sideways, I suppose is the best way I can put it. So there were a lot of issues that went into that installation that were far and above what both parties expected. But it's just, this was one project from my perspective that it seemed like one thing after another just went an odd way. A carpet over on this side, a catch basin that nobody knew existed here, pipes that lead to who knows where. You know, the fact that we're even having this conversation with a budget where it is probably a minor miracle at that point. And also, I'd say there is some value added, I would add, that some parts of this project that were not billed that we were able to that gave us a better product in the end. So that's I really think that's also the kind of the fundamental question for the board too is, you know, did you get value here? Did you get what you expected? And so, yeah, I mean, we've reached the end of that point. You know, thank goodness we're through that construction season, and now we can take a look back.
Anybody else have any
I'll
questions?
just add. I was just going to add. I think from a value received, I'm quite pleased, and I think one thing that being at the ribbon cutting, hearing the pride that Seth clearly feels for having completed this project, really came through with that ribbon cutting, and I think the town has gotten a great product from a crew that has pride in their work, and I think it shows.
Great. Anybody have anything else for Andrew or Seth? No. Great. Andrew, anything else to add, or are you good?
All set if there are no other questions.
Nope. I think we're good. Thank you. Appreciate your help on this.
Thank
Oh, yeah.
Thank you guys. You have a wonderful night.
Right, you too. Hey, Seth, while we have you, can you give us an update on the other projects in town?
Well, yeah, sure, absolutely. Ditching is complete on Lewis Hill Road. We went from one end to the other. We fixed any previous issues. As you may or may not know, there was a few issues that we'd all kind of put together on that road between a culvert and a drainage problem. We had actually two drainage problems associated with culverts on opposite ends of roads, as it turns out, that we were able to rectify and get that all fixed. We removed all ledge. We hammered out, I believe it was 5 different spots of ledge that we have in there. So the road is totally clear now from one end to the other. We removed any miscellaneous trees, tree limbs, did some cutting back in some areas, and got a ditch, cleaned the bridge. And I have new signs. The only part that's not complete is the new signs have come in. I just got to get the new street signs up on either end and replace the stop signs as part of what we started last year with our sign program. So that will complete that road as far as what we had planned on it for this year. So that came out really well. Stonebridge Circle has been all reclaimed. The cross culverts have all been replaced. And all new base pavement has been installed up there. That project is complete for that phase of our road program. So that is done. Academy Hill has also been reclaimed. Base and surface pavement have been installed. Total of 4.5 inches of new pavement put on that particular area. And that will be shouldered when we shoulder a small little portion of Academy Hill from the end of the curb to the end of the project. And we also have to shoulder West Hamlet Road. So we'll be shouldering all 3 of them at the same time. I'm probably looking mid next week for the shouldering material to be put down. So
About that next section on Academy Hill, after where we stopped paving, the
Yep.
section you just did, I noticed that's pretty tired in there too.
Yeah, you're talking just past from where, yes. Well,
That's
to
where
be,
we just
yeah,
did.
to be honest, Brian, we had 500 feet in the budget, and I picked the worst 500 feet there. Really, we could have gone 100 feet more on the beginning, to be honest with you. Closer towards Timber, that there's a little bit of a ripple there too, and we could have probably gone 100 feet on the other end, I mean, but where do you pick that? Where do you pick that line? I would love to have done 800 feet and totally, but I picked the worst 500 feet. Next year we can pick another section or what have you, and we can do some more and keep picking away at it. But I tried to address. I remember that Sheila's house in particular, right through there, really became soft and rutted. So I wanted to really focus our efforts on that spot that seemed to be the worst. But I agree with you. Yes, there is a little bit. If you recall, in the past, I had talked about shimming and overlaying a couple of sections in that road to hold the surface together to keep it tight. That's definitely something that we'll be looking to do next year, or as budgets allow. But in order to preserve the past reconstruction efforts that were done on that road, we've got to keep that surface somewhat tight and together. So I agree. It's starting to show a little age. We're starting to get a little bit of rutting going on there. So whatever we can do to preserve it, to prevent a reconstruction type of scenario, would be in the town's best interest for sure.
All right, thanks.
we did run into some pretty interesting things on Stonebridge. I'm not sure if you folks are aware, but just some tidbit facts. I like to enlighten the board on this stuff just because, um, I feel it is hard for you guys to see your value of what you're getting. But every culvert on Stonebridge Circle was installed backwards, every single one of them. So we changed all that, got them all flipped around. There was actually two culverts that we didn't even know existed. We found, and we replaced those at the same time. We found the cable line is actually exposed and running across the top of the ground up through much of it. So I've got to get a hold of the utility company, and we've got to fix that because that's clearly a hazard that needs to be rectified. But that street is in pretty good. We made the cul-de-sac area slightly wider to help with snow removal. And quite frankly, when you meet a car on the backside of it, I know it's not a largely traveled road. There's not a ton of houses, but when you do come across a delivery truck or an oil truck or a school bus or anything on the backside, it was pretty tight before. So we gained about 2.5 feet on the backside of the circle just to give us a little bit more of a radius and a little bit more room on that backside. I think if you take a ride up through, you find that we cleaned it out pretty well for trees. We've got some good sunlight starting to get on there now. It'll be ready for the surface treatment and complete that road next year. And that will complete the entire area around off of Academy Hill for the foreseeable time. Let's come along. The only thing that we have left to complete, which quite frankly will be just a matter of hitting the very nicest day possible, is we have about 600 ton of shimmin surface to do on Glidden, Pump, and Cross Street area. I've held off on that. John and I have had discussions about this. I'll use this term to the board so that you can understand my thinking of this. The treatment that we're doing on this road at this point in time, if it was a normal finish application, I would never allow to happen. We wouldn't be finishing Academy Hill with surface pavement this time of year. It's not appropriate. It's not a good use of money. The treatment that we're doing on Cross, Pump, and Glidden is simply a stopgap measure. Okay, this is like it's glorified shimming is all that we're doing down there to try to help with make the road surface somewhat tight. The road is in such state of disrepair that we're just using this to get through for the next couple of years. So I'm not as concerned with where we're at timing wise because it's nothing permanent. It's very, very temporary. Just like we did the shimming on Academy Hill, same exact philosophy as we did before the construction project. So, but with that said, we still have a few days coming up. There's going to be fairly decent. This is just a day's project down there. We're going to find the best day that we can. And, if I still don't think that it's right, we won't do it. But if I can think that it's going to at least get us through where we need to, then we're going to shim and pave just those areas and hold us over until we come up with a more permanent solution for that neighborhood.
Seth, enlighten me and maybe others. How do you put a culvert in backwards?
Well, on the culverts you have, especially on the plastic culverts, you have a male and a female end, and you have to make sure that the female end is up water so it receives the water so that when it travels down the pipe, it comes out the male end and into the female end and discharges. Well, when you flip it around, your gaskets are all backwards and the pipe is the wrong way.
Got it.
So they put them in so that the male end was up, so that then your male end goes in. Now you do have a gasket, but it's potential for water to get down in around the gaskets, and then that causes failure and stuff. So we always put our culverts in the other way around, so that water travels basically from high to low to high to low, and travels down through and tries to keep it drier and better.
Perfect. That makes sense. Yep.
So, but we but overall that went pretty quick. We have a few other things in the works from our budget perspective. I met with, there's a new regional representative from Asplund. I'm not sure if you folks know, but Tom Kostenbader has moved on to other areas of interest. So good luck to him, and we're sorry to see him go. But I've met with that person. We went out through West Old County Road and discussed our work. Now this is where it gets interesting, right? Tom was a Newcastle resident and he's always treated the town very well. He gave me budget numbers, but there was no essential paperwork. It was a handshake and this and that. So we're working on trying to finalize those numbers, and I'm providing documentation that Tom did give to me, what little there was, back to the Aspen guy, because he's like, I got no record of any of this. So we're starting, we're learning we're learning each other and working through that. So, but I hope to get work started out there on the tree cutting process shortly. And then on top of that, I would urge you guys to go take a look at the sand and salt shed. We had some complaints from, help me out, John, was it the Army Corps? I think it was the Army Corps that had some complaints when CMP was up there looking at doing their work. They brought the Army Corps, I believe it was the Army Corps, up to take a look at the site. They found some deficiencies with some erosion control and getting into the bay, and had some concerns about what the town's sand shed was looking like as far as being able to handle those types of water runoff. I did have $5,000 in the budget for some improvements up there. We were planning on using that for some pavement improvements where we load and unload the sand and salt trucks, but instead we fixed all the berming and got the water control issue, so that the site is now contained, so that we have one spot where water can get off instead of the entire spot. I also reconstructed the entrance. We put new bollards up so that we can prepare for a fence in the future, a gate, so that we can actually secure the facility. And we also installed some new poles so that we can have the utility, so that we can finish lighting the site up there. And to be completely honest with you, we overran on mix as a result of a math error on our behalf on Academy Hill. So we gave that to the town and we paved the entrance to the town at no cost. So you got a new paved entrance into the sand and salt shed, and that work is completed. I made in the years past, has been a discussion of the board to allow public access to sand while we were there working. I did construct that area and it is ready to go, but in conversations with John, until the board directs further and decides to allow that access, I won't put anything in it, but I did solve that problem and take that initiative while we were there. So upon your approval and or direction, that is something that we can do with it.
Great. Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for Seth on any of the projects? Or? John, you want to discuss putting sand out there, sand mix out now, or you want to put that on next agenda?
If it depends really if the five of you are prepared for that. I think we could put it on a subsequent agenda. Let's hope we don't have a lot of snow. Let's just hope we don't have a lot of snow in the next whatever it is. What I'd like to do is get some policy, see if there's a policy out there. I think most people, it's a bucket or two buckets, per storm, blah, blah, blah. We need to have something that says what the standards are for residents to use it. But, the fact, our biggest issue before for Tor and Wanda, Wanda wasn't on before we talked about this, and for Rob, the concern was, how do you secure the site? How do you build this in such a way so that residents want to have the access, but on the other hand, how can you do it safely? And how do you do it so people don't take advantage of it? And so there was a whole bunch of different issues that came along with that. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd like maybe some time we can put it on. If you wouldn't mind, we can put it on the next agenda, unless you guys have something all five of you all agree with and just want to throw your hands up and say yes to. I think I'd like maybe a little bit of time so I can write something up and then you guys can think about it and digest it, if that's okay.
That works.
Sounds good to me.
And I wasn't suggesting it so that you guys had to take any action. I just wanted you to, if you have 2 seconds and need to take your significant other for a ride, go see the sand shed. It would be a great place to sit and enjoy the view of the ocean. But you can just see what we've done up there and how we fixed the entrance and kind of prepared for a little bit of the future and some other steps. But it was just a project that we've completed over the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to throw it in there. It was purely more just for your information than anything else.
I'll make that my next date night. My wife would love that.
It's good. Just watch out for the 12 packs of the empties that are usually laid on the side there. It gets frequented quite often.
Great. Anything else before we move on? All right. 5.2 core zoning code implementation. Thank you, Seth.
Do we need to approve the pay recs?
No, that's later underneath the warrants.
Oh, okay, okay, sorry. Not looking at the agenda.
Yep, it's fine.
Good eyes on the road.
Exactly. Oh man. Okay, so core zoning code. So I don't have something for you to look at. Ben, Tor, and Ken met a little more than a week ago or so. Long enough ago for it to matter in terms of how long everyone was around with other people, but in any event, we were able to, those guys met and talked about forms and talked about a whole bunch of stuff. I'll let Tor or Ben talk about that some more. But basically where we are at this point, I think, is starting to firm up what at your next meeting, hopefully putting something together that you can vote on at that point. I think really the point here tonight, we had some real quick conversations about what that might be at your last meeting. So speaking with Ben tonight about this, the thought was really just to really quickly talk about what the framework, I suppose, of what that might look like, what a fee schedule, kind of the structure of it, not necessarily the dollar amounts, whatever, but the structure of it, because that's really, like with the core zoning code, the most important part of it is the structure and how it works, and if you can build a fee schedule that kind of fits with that, I think it will make it easier, not just for the administration of it, but for the residents to be able to, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. This goes with this and so forth. So that was really what we had talked about. And I don't think we're really talking about an hour-long conversation here, not by a long shot, but I think really just to give you a sense of where some of the ideas are flowing and, go from there. So Ben, do you want to maybe just talk about what you've, your kind of mock-up of what you have and where your head is headed?
Sure. I'm sorry if my microphone was unmuted earlier. I just connected to the meeting and I walked away from my desk, so don't do that, right? Let me just really quick back up and say that trying to unpack what the town currently has for fee schedules, there's 5 or 6 of them. They're very confusing. Most of that confusion is actually due to the fact that we use a couple of terms interchangeably. Application fee, permit fee, review fee, all appear in various contexts and mean sometimes different things. So that's a little confusing, and often things are repeated. So for example, depending on where you're looking and how you're looking, and you're trying to add up the fees that you need to do something, a special permit may cost $150, it may cost $300, it may cost $450. I myself have been looking at these documents for days and I still don't know the answer to that question. So it's a question of, again, sort of how much do we sort of redo from scratch versus how much do we try to hold over. And there's quite a bit that we don't necessarily need to touch. There's like cemetery fees and fees that have nothing to do with zoning. So I think it's really, when we're talking about the fee schedule, at least from like the planning board perspective and the review perspective, the CEO perspective, we're really just talking about those permit fees that revolve around zoning, use, building buildings, things like that. So one of the ideas that Tor and Ken and I were talking about, because we were really talking about application forms, is some way to keep the primary application form for doing zoning very simple. It's a quick, short checklist, and then sort of behind that, it would be supported by a permit sheet that the CEO would fill in. That's quite a bit more complex, but that wouldn't be something that applicants would necessarily need to see. So for example, there's a lot of questions on our current use permit or building permit application form that we just kind of said, well, there's really no need for that to be on there. and that's not really even something that an applicant would necessarily know unless they're paying someone else to prepare an application for them, and they're doing all the research, you know what I mean? So it's even simple things like map and lot number. Well, not everyone knows their map and lot number. They know their address, they know their telephone number, and they know they want to build a garage, right? They don't know their map and lot number. So they got to come to the CEO and ask, what's my map and lot number? So there are some aspects that by default, the CEO just ends up filling out, and to ask the applicant for all that information is ridiculous. So that would really help simplify the main application form. But from the perspective of like a fee schedule, one of the thoughts that I kind of had and I started running with, and I kind of wanted to show it with you, John. I don't know, do you have it in front of you? Can you throw it up?
Yeah, I can do that. Hang on just a sec.
So there's a couple of different ideas that I kind of want to try and encapsulate. And I wrote a memo to the board, to you all, as a proposal for a fee schedule. And one of the things I guess I wanted to say right off the bat is that kind of part and parcel with the way that the old land use ordinance really was aimed at discouraging development. I really strongly believe that the old fee schedule was aimed at supporting that. And so, and I would say that it did so by making fees unreasonably high, unnecessarily high, and arbitrarily high. There's no reason for the numbers to be the way that they are, and I really, I guess I really strongly feel like that the benefit to the town for anyone wanting to do a development project in the town isn't in the fee you collect during the application and the permitting process. The benefit is in the taxable value that it adds to the town over time. And so to go after high permit fees, high application fees as a way to pay for the CEO position or some other sort of exploitable revenue stream or source of revenue, I just don't think that that's, I think that's a very 1950s mentality when you come to think about permits and application fees. And so what I guess I'd like to propose is a way to really just simplify it, completely do away with the idea that your permit is based on the number of square feet of whatever you're building. If you're building a house, right now it's 15 cents a square foot. That's your fee. And it's first floor, second floor, finished basement, garage. All these things have different or the same square footage. And I guess to simplify it and bring it more into line with how the core code works, just create a fee structure that's sort of a flat number fee structure. And you just sort of add up the numbers as you go down, depending on what you're doing. One of the things about the core code I think that's great is that when you started at the beginning, it's arranged in the articles from most general to most specific, meaning you start with districts, then you go to sites, then you go to buildings, then you go to design standards, and then you go to use standards. So you progressively get more complex, I guess, as you go down. Not every application needs the same degree of review. Some applications, it's just, okay, this is the district you're in and this is the building you're building, you're done. Some applications require, all of it. So what you see here in the sort of second table down where it says zoning review fees was my attempt to try and capture that idea that if you have a very simple project and it just requires, district review for compliance, and those numbers are obviously just, I threw something in there so there'd be a number there. That's it. It could be anything. But, it's $25. Versus if you're proposing to do a project that is, in a design historic district, with a home occupation use or residential companion use or whatever, you might actually hit all of those. And so, your basic review fee would include a component from each one of those sections of the code. But not everyone is like that. So if you already have a house and you already have a garage, but you want to start a business in your garage, you just need a use permit. So you come in and you just have that review done, and that's the only part of the review that needs to happen. You don't necessarily need all the rest of it. So that was an attempt to try and simplify it, get away from the idea of scaling fees. I think that if we collectively, the town, in creating the core code, have done our job correctly, the way that the core code is arranged, the impact of a development project on a district is already managed by the standards of that district. So applying per square foot fees, I believe, just seems unreasonable and unnecessary. So anyway, this is what I came up with as a starter for just an example fee schedule. Like I said, I've got a memo that I'm working on that sort of outlines this in more specificity, and then I've also been working on the application forms that would support this, for the planning board and the CEO and everything. Just haven't had as much time as I thought I would in the last 2 weeks. Sorry to ramble on.
No, you did well. It's only been a few minutes, Ben. You're okay.
I'm a talker.
No, not you.
Ow.
No. Anyways, you guys, any thoughts on this, or just want to look at it? Go ahead, Tor.
Nothing.
Ben, I
Hang
think
on,
you did,
Rob. Go ahead, Tor.
Ben, I think it's a good start. It's good to see all these items listed out. So I think it definitely brings it out of sort of the woodwork, kind of everything that's kind of could have a fee associated with it. So yeah, I think this is a great start. I think we need to just one thing. Well, I'll just mention this quick. If you can just do a quick change on where at the very bottom where it says design review districts only. Can you delete that? Can you delete that language, please? Because I think it could say, like, in districts where applicable.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
we just got rid of design review, so that
Right.
word kind of
Yes.
that
Yeah,
word
that was
arrangement makes me nervous.
right. That was a marker for my own. I just forgot to remove it. That's all.
Not yet. The only thing I would say with the fees, two things. Is there a way that we can, I guess it would be hard to do I was going to ask for like a spreadsheet comparison, what we have now to this, but there's two totally different things. So I don't think you're going to have the same itemization in a spreadsheet. So that's probably not going to help. So that means the second question would be on, I think we should just know in our annual revenue item budget item, what exactly does the town receive in permit fees? It could be just a aggregate number, or it could be broken down into the different categories. But I think we just need to know that, because if we're gonna, there's a big difference between charging 15 cents a square foot for a 3,000 square foot home, plus some other use conditions, whatever, and paying $25, which is a great deal. But I think I'd like to know what that number is, and then we'll have a discussion about that.
I can give you an example if you want
Of
something I did tonight as a comparison.
Okay.
Just using these numbers that I plugged in that are just have no basis in anything. I just put something in to have a placeholder there. But if you were to right now under the land use ordinance build a house, a single unit residential building in either of the rural districts of Newcastle, and it was about 2,000 square feet, 2-story, your permit starts at about $375 and goes up. Okay, that's and that hits like the different types of CEO review, earth moving, it hits all the sort of things. That's not if you're not in shoreland. That's just you got a house on 2 acres somewhere in the rural, and you want to build a house with a garage. $375 is kind of where you enter the current fee schedule. Under this example fee schedule, you'd be looking at doing a small project plan, which would be reviewed for $25. That's what is in there now. You would need a district, say we're in rural, right? You'd need a district, which is $25. Because you're in rural, there's no other necessary, unless you're proposing to do something that impacts one of the site standards, you don't need site, building, design, or use. So you would just you don't need to do a driveway. There's no fee for a driveway I put down there. And it's not a single unit residential building because in rural, under the core code, you'd go down to unregulated buildings. And I just stuck that at the same price as a single unit residential, assuming, I don't know, that might make sense, maybe. So $375, land use ordinance, start at $150, core code.
Okay.
And to answer your question, Tor, about where the total amount of permit fees we've collected on an annual basis, the number has kind of really been all over the map. Last year we were a shade under 4,000. Of course, there's some COVID-related stuff in that. Within I'd say that the average over the last 4 or 5 years has been probably around $5,000. That doesn't include planning board fees. So the planning board fees have been right around $1,000, but that can vary wildly, right? You have a situation like a Rennie's warehouse where it's a per square foot price. 1 year it can be crazy, and the next year it's relatively flat. And we've been right around 1,000 without one of those major developments. Design review right around $1,000, $1,500. So all told, I'd say on average the last few years you're probably looking at about 6,000 or 7,000. That's including all 3 of those categories, excluding their plumbing permit.
Okay.
But of course that could, like I said, one with that per square foot number, that can be a pretty wide range from year to year.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Rob, did you have something?
Yeah, I think this sounds like a really promising approach. One thing, without being able to see the visual aid, I think you could have some level of scale in there by not only which sections of the code need to be reviewed, but which level of review, whether it's small project or large project or subdivision, having whether it's those grades of those other fees or whether those are just separate fees. But I think while I think it makes sense to get away from the square foot, I think we do want to have something for larger projects versus smaller projects. And I think that could fit in there as well.
All right. Sorry, Joel.
I'd just say that I think the idea behind permits and having them is that we get people to come in and fill them out and make sure that they're following the guidelines for the town. So I just heard a thing on the radio the other day, and it was about a lot of libraries that are waiving their late book fees because they find it doesn't actually function to benefit the library financially that much, and what it ends up doing is it ends up disenfranchising the people who kind of need it the most. So they've just gone to waiving them, and I think if someone wants to come in and look at the regulations and make sure that they're doing everything that they need to do, I think that should be kind of rewarded. I mean, we shouldn't be penalizing people for doing that. I think making a simple fee schedule that's very easy to understand and doesn't seem doesn't seem like an expensive thing or something that's gonna, you know, disenfranchise them in any way. I think is a good way to start, and that way you know what's going on. Again, the whole purpose is we don't make money by fees. We make money. You know, we fund our town through real estate taxes. So having a better idea what's going on in town is actually a better thing than making $5,000 over the course of a year on permits. So I would say anything we could do to simplify it and make it something that people were, you know, more willing to go through, I think is the goal here.
Yeah, I think using Ben's example, the comparison isn't $5,000 as opposed to zero. It's $5,000 opposed to something else, which might be, you know, $2,000 a year. So, I mean, we're talking about a difference of a few $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
But couldn't we streamline this even a little more, just to make it so we're not grabbing a fee here, a fee there, and a fee here to give you your total, and just kind of frame it even simpler for new construction and then remodels or additions, and pretty much just flat fee the whole thing?
So, I thought about that. One of the other aspects that I, at the very bottom, the table at the bottom, was a way to capture the idea that the different types of buildings that are regulated under the core code have different degrees of impact on the district that they're being built in. And that those per square foot fees that we have now might be better thought of as an impact fee than a permit fee. And so that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the different types of buildings that, you know, are regulated or unregulated, depending on the district. And so, you know, whether we want to keep that idea or throw it away, you know, is fine either way. The problem that I'm running into is that literally, I mean, I've got what, 5 tables there. There's probably a whole nother page of all the other types of permits that we have on the various fee schedules. And so there's just a lot of different types of permits. And unless you want to just say any permit is $50 or any permit is $100, doesn't matter what kind it is, doesn't matter what type it is, it's a flat fee. If you want to say that, fine. If you want to have a little bit more flexibility, we can't do that. The core code is designed around the idea that there are certain things that are CEO review, and there are certain things that have to go to planning board or board of appeals. And differentiating, at least between those two levels, is sort of what's reflected in the small project plan and large project plan. And then subdivision also goes to the planning board. Master plan goes to the planning board. Plan revision goes to the planning board. Use permit doesn't need to go to the planning board. It stays with the CEO unless he wants it to go to the planning board. So there's some, I don't know, push-pull in the code about who the ultimate reviewing authority is. Does that make sense? And so without some degree of definition about the permits, if you stuck it at a number and then you had to have a permit fee for each one that hit it, it could get large quickly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Ben, I'm just, I'm thinking that without seeing your application that you're working on, that maybe this mimics the checkboxes on your permit application.
It's close to, it's the idea, yeah.
So I guess what I'm visualizing is an application process where you check off a bunch of boxes and then it correlates to these fees. And then the clerk or the CEO whoever's processing it would just basically add up the check boxes and figure out what the fee is. So I think this would make more sense when we see the application itself. But I actually think if, you know, a category and a fee associated with a type of application is probably not a bad thing, because it isolates the project. It says, okay, this project is it's just a change of use, and people, you know, somebody's not going to get confused with, okay, I'm paying a use fee, but does this mean that I can build my addition too, and, you know, do all this? So I think it would highlight the intricate, or I guess the fine-grained nature of the core code that we have now.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good example, Tor. Right now, uses, it's again unclear to me when you just want to do a use. Are you paying an application fee for the use and then a permit fee for the use, or are you paying the permit fee and it's getting reviewed, but if it goes to the planning board, then it's the next? It is seriously confusing right now. I don't know how anyone keeps it straight. Seriously.
I think it should be change of use.
Well,
oh no, not necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, under this one, I would propose that use or change of use, it's a review, and then you get your permit. So the application review costs something because it takes time to do it, but the permit doesn't cost anything. You just get it. You get a piece of paper.
Okay.
And so that's kind of what I've been, honestly, I've been spending more time, I've been spending more time in theory than I have actually been putting pen to paper, because some things, it's like maybe you want to assess the fee on the process of review, or maybe you want to have a fee based on the fact that they're actually submitting an application, regardless of the fact that it needs to be reviewed, because it absolutely needs to be reviewed. Or maybe it doesn't cost anything to submit the application and there's no review fee, but there's a fee on the permit. And right now we do it, it's just a tangled mess. And so I've been trying mentally to just untangle that and say, let's make it simple, right? Let's just make it really simple. And maybe I'm not there yet.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I always forget to charge customers for the permit fees. So if we lower it, it's better for me. And less money I'm getting to bill for.
Is the BOS just we're just reviewing fees, right? We're not actually, are we going to ultimately approve the application, or that's up to the planning board?
The planning, so the ordinance leaves basically up to the reviewing authority to determine the application. So the Board of Selectmen has the responsibility to set the fee schedule. So, I mean, as you said, they're kind of hand in hand in some way. Whereas if you can make the fee schedule, you know, mesh with the application, it works so much better that way. So really, you know, the idea was really to have this kind of, you know, conversation about, you know, is the format the right direction? And then, you know, it's a bit of chicken and egg, which comes first, what you're going to pay, or how you're going to review it. So if there's some agreement in terms of stratifying based upon the type of review, or you know, kind of using the basis of how the code is laid out and moving away from the flat square footage or the scaled square footage numbers and moving to something like this, then that informs, I think, the creation of the application, and, you know, then a final draft of what these numbers would mean in a real sense for your next meeting. That's kind of the pathway to go down here. And your next meeting is December 14th. So that gives us that would be about a 2-week jump before the 1st. So that would give us a little bit of time to let people know, hey, this is what's coming. Pick and choose which way to go. A lot of it's dictated by what's in the code, or what's in the ordinance, but at least they'd know the numbers as well. And that gives us time also to prepare forms and print and all the other stuff we have to do in the office.
Great.
So this is the path that I've been developing the application forms based on these ideas for the planning board and the CEO. So unless you all say, no, this is dumb, we need to go a different route, I'm going to keep going down this path, and I think ultimately present, a set of application forms, and the Board of Selectmen is ultimately responsible for the fee schedule. If the two lined up, like John said, it would make it really simple for everyone. But I just need to know, I guess I just need some direction. If you're not happy with the direction that I'm proposing for the fee schedule, which is informed by how I'm developing the application forms based on how the core code is laid out, then we got to rethink everything.
I'm not in favor of rethinking everything. I like it.
I think it looks good, Ben.
Makes sense. Keep going, Ben.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to keep chugging away on that. So ultimately, someone's got to put numbers to these things.
Yeah. Bring us the forms and everything, and we can probably do that next meeting.
All right. Do you want me to, while I'm trying to unpack and salvage what we have, do you want me to try and translate fees from the old schedule to the new schedule, even though they're going to add up differently?
I don't think you should waste your time doing it. Because we don't, like John said, it's $5,000 a year. It's not huge dollars we're talking about for an income. I think we just set new fees with this and not worry about the existing. Like you said, it's convoluted and hard to get to a right answer on the existing code. So
good enough. All right.
My hope would be that we would have a fee schedule, a draft fee schedule for you to look over, for you all to basically figure out how much. Hopefully, you'd be able to figure out how much would my house be to rebuild. If I had to put it through, is it going to be more? Is it going to be less? Am I in the ballpark of what it should be or not? And that's the first thing I would have been doing if I was, okay, what does this really mean? That's what Ben's already doing, in various parts of town. How does it work? How does it not work? And then, that's the first thing, I'm sure. So if we can get something like this together, we have an extra week between now and your next meeting. So that gives all kinds of time for Ben to not have anything go wrong. And, and we can get this done, and maybe in advance, so we can get this thing happening. So that's the plan.
my house just on square footage at 15 cents would have been $450 for permit. Yeah. And that's without going to planning board or anything else that's thrown into it. So.
Right. And we're also going from a situation where we had different levels of review. So a board would be, one different level, and it's just, Anyway, yeah. So it sounds like you guys like what Ben's put together, and we'll keep working on it collaboratively somewhat, but mostly Ben, because he's really good at it. And flattery never got you anywhere, right? We'll keep working on it and hopefully have something for you next time.
I like the whole idea of
Yeah, but
the checklist matching the fees, and the girls in the office, if they're collecting the fees, can say, okay, you've got this, this, and this, and it matches to this. That makes it simple for everyone. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate. I think the idea that we're not trying to raise revenue with fees. We're trying to encourage compliance and people coming forward with projects. So I think that that combined with a logical structure and simplicity, I think are the goals to be working on.
Will do. Thank
Sounds
y'all.
good.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it as always.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Ben.
Good night, Ben.
Night.
All right, moving on to our town warrants. We have three of them tonight, one for 304, 863.80, one for 391, 838.62, and one for 46, 028.32. Just to put them all together. Thank you, Joel. Do I have a second? Thanks, Thor.
Yep.
Discussion on any of them? We already beat two of them up pretty good, so. No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. And I think that concludes tonight's meetings. I don't think we have anything else. Unless anybody has anything they want to add.
Oh, one real quick thing. Your next meeting is due to be December 14th,
Yes.
which would mean your final meeting of the month will be December 28th. I just wanted to check in terms of the timing of those meetings. Are you still planning to meet? Will people be away on the 28th? I don't know who's going where or what's going on, whatever. But like, my question is the 14th, obviously it seems to be far enough away from the holiday, but is there any issues with the 28th? I mean, sometimes we haven't met that week of the 28th, so that's why I'm asking.
I won't be here. I'll be out of town, so.
Okay.
This will be Joel's meeting.
I might go to the grocery store at some point that week, but I should be able to. So.
So we don't have a meeting on the 7th? Why don't we have a meeting on the 7th?
That's the first Monday.
Oh,
Meet
right.
second and fourth.
Yeah.
You're just so used to meeting every Monday.
I am, yeah, all right, yeah.
If you want to meet outside at noon, Joel still has his tent. We can set up out the side of the for a pop-up tour if you want, but it's starting to get a little chilly.
I'm all set, thank you.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thanks, Tor. Joel, all in favor?